Mr. Speaker, the pleasure is mine today to add my support to this 2023 budget. Mr. Speaker, my congratulations are extended to the Honorable Dr. Ashley Kumar Singh, Minister of Finance, for his Herculean effort in the crafting, preparation, and presentation of this budget. Congratulations are also extended to the staff of the Ministry of Finance who worked diligently beyond the call of duty to ensure that this budget was presented to this nation on time. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member that just spoke, Ms. Alert, that had her maiden speech. Mr. Speaker, let me correct some things that she said. One is that it was the former President Janet Jagan who first brought Exxon to this country in 1999. And Mr. Speaker, in April of 2015, under the presidency of His Excellency Donald Ramotar, is when Exxon first announced that they found oil in April 2015. What miss exactly? It was a big joke. But unfortunately for this country, Mr. Speaker, the PPP lost the elections and there entered into the ring the APNU AFC. And Mr. Speaker, in April of 2015, no, Mr. Speaker, in May of 2015, it's when APNU collected $3.6 million and signed what I would deem a messy production agreement bonus. Mr. Speaker, and the rest we know about. The rest is history. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member also made, what was she asking? She was asking for single parents to be supported by government, that we should help persons who have lots of children. Maybe, Mr. Speaker, if the honorable member was paying attention, when the Honorable Minister of Human Services was speaking, and the honorable members, Mr. Mahi Paul was not making so much of noise, they would have heard when she mentioned the two programs that she was implementing to assist those very persons. So, Mr. Speaker, it means that we should listen carefully when persons are speaking in this House, so that we wouldn't distort or misinform the public. Mr. Speaker, the theme of this budget, improving lives today, building prosperity for tomorrow, properly describes what this budget is designed to achieve for all of our people. This budget, sir, comes at a juncture when the eyes of the world are focused on us. There is no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that the major economists worldwide are keenly waiting to see if Guyana will become the next Dutch disease victim. But I dare say, Mr. Speaker, that their wait shall be in vain. Because this PPPC administration will continue to implement scientifically proven, prudent economic practices which will be sustainable for generations to come. Mr. Speaker, when the Honorable Member, Mr. Ramjatan, spoke, he said that his party had proposed to the Minister of Finance that he do the following things immediately. And those things were, one, increase the minimum wage to $120,000, increase old age pensions to $50,000, and increase the public assistance to $40,000. Mr. Speaker, clearly, sir, it is obvious that the honorable member knows nothing about sustainable economic practices. He is behaving, sir, like the man who had the goose that laid the golden egg. And he thought that instead of waiting for one golden egg every day, it was best he killed that goose and he will get hundreds of eggs. But we all know, sir, what was the outcome of that story. Sir, the goose was dead and there were no more golden eggs. Mr. Speaker, similarly, we heard other members of the opposition calling for additional spending on various activities during their budget presentations. Let it be known, sir, that this government will not acquiesce to the frivolous demands of our colleagues on the opposite side of the House, which will obviously land us into the same hole that the dead goose ended up into. Also, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member Ramjatan alleged that there is an undernutrition phenomenon that is occurring in Guyana. Also, Mr. Speaker, when the Honorable Member, Mr. Roysdale Ford, made his presentation, he also mentioned about the presence of malnutrition in our communities. Mr. Speaker, let me set the records, or let me remind the honorable members, and for those who may not have known, I would like the honorable, either of the two honorable members, to point us to any statistics that show us that there is an increase or that there are numbers, lots of persons with undernutrition disease, or, as the honorable member Mr. Ford said, malnutrition. Mr. Speaker, the facts are that it was this PPPC government who, I don't want to say stopped, but we diminished, and more so we would want to say eliminated that scourge of undernutrition from this country in the early part of 1994. When we took government in 1992, sir, you know what we took over? There was a special ward by the name of the Pediatric Malnutrition Ward in this country. And all of us, I think, we look at the TV and we see those gruesome photographs that the donor agencies put up with malnourished children from the continents of, in some Latin American countries and the continent of Africa. And we probably cringe when we see those little children with fine limbs, very stick-like limbs, big stomachs, a big head, and some little fine hair on it. Sir, that is what we had here in this country until the first quarter of 1994, sir. Sir, this is no joke. This is showing that this PPPC government has always and will always have people at the forefront of everything that we do. Mr. Speaker, there was another, and as a matter of fact, if we go back to statistics, we will see that one of the most the causes of death in children below 5 years old, 5 years and below, was what? Malnutrition, sir. Malnutrition and gastrointestinal diseases. Mr. Speaker, there was another thing too, which not only the children were affected. We had to deal with the adults. And where was it occurring? In one of our the government institution. Remember, they had the Berry Walk. And I'm convinced there are some persons who may still be alive who were incarcerated during that time who will have the scars to show what happened there. And sir, instead of Berry now in our prisons, we have persons going in skinny and coming out back well muscular out of our prisons. And sir, what we have now, instead of malnourished or undernourished children, I don't want to say malnutrition, because we have some doctors in here who would say that malnutrition means if you're undernourished or overnourished. Well, I'm going to say undernourished, because we don't have undernourished children right now. We have obese children. That's the issue that we're facing now in this country. And the Honorable Minister of Health will tell you, we are currently implementing mechanisms for nutritionists to advise our parents not to overfeed their children and have them fat, like our friend Mahi Paul over there. Mr. Speaker, so when the honorable members sit here and say things, they must...
But honorable member, you're confusing fat with muscular. I hope you're not imputing. Okay.
I would like to urge the honorable members of this House, and by now I think our discussions would be, we should be honorable, and I think the public would appreciate it and enjoy it more if we come here with constructive criticisms and the facts. If we come with facts, people out there might be able to relate to it. But then if we come with facts and people say, that's not, no, I don't believe that. Remember, when we speak, people listen to us. And I think we should try and stick to the facts sometimes, or all the time. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member, Mr. Ford, also said he is hoping, senior counsel, I will not take that from him. He called for the government to have a relationship, a meaningful relationship with the workers' union in order to look at better conditions for them. Mr. Speaker, let me, for the sake of informing Mr. Speaker, Mr. Ford, that this government has been having negotiations, interactions with the Public Service Union, and those negotiations and those interactions are aimed at improving the employment benefits, both salaried and non-salaried, of our workers. Mr. Speaker, maybe I know that Mr. Ford pays keen attention to what happens with the Public Service Union and the PSM, but I think something sidetracked him, because we have been meeting since last year, and we met quite a few times this year already. Year before last year, and we're scheduled to meet again this year very soon. Maybe he was busy. He was busy with some of the other comrades in here, indulging in his subversive phone calls, you know, so he couldn't play and plot, so he couldn't pay much attention to what was going on there. Mr. Speaker, The best of all, and I think we must appreciate that we may have some candidates for Hollywood here. The best of all was the honorable member, Miss Flubes. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member, when the honorable member made her dramatically choreographed, listen to my words, Mr. Speaker, because I think she is a good candidate for Hollywood right now. Her dramatically choreographed presentation on the first day, and that was her opening baton of our parliament.
While you might be imputing she was auditioning, I will now have to ask that your audition be extended by 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask that my honourable colleague be given time to conclude her presentation.
Thank you, Honourable Minister
Yes, Mr.
Teixeira.
Speaker.
Honourable Member, you may continue.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Mr. Speaker. During her speech, she tried to portray this government of being uncaring, heartless, and most of all, racist. Mr. Speaker, and why was this so? Why was she saying that? All because there were a group of persons who were illegally squatting on the government lands, which are earmarked for developmental programs in this country. And Mr. Speaker, they were not removed sneakingly by night. They were firstly informed that they would need to remove. They were offered packages, sir, relocation packages, which some of them accepted and some of them refused. Most of them accepted, thank you. But some of them who were instigated, and I think we know who did that, who were instigated not to receive those packages. Those were the ones who eventually were removed. Mr. Speaker, I am going to quote something and then I will say where it's from. Let me say where it's from first. Mr. Speaker, this is a quote from Mrs. Valerie Adams Patterson, who was the former Minister of Housing of the PPPC government. And this article, sir, is on the DPI website. APNU government, sir, sorry. And this is what she said, sir. And these words that she spoke was after there was demolition of some houses in Seafield, Sophia, in 2016, sir. In the wee hours of the morning, when, yes, I will do so. When children were asleep, sir, the wee hours of the morning. And this is what she said when the media approached her on the very day. Mr. Speaker, she said, we, meaning the government of the day, cannot continue to operate the way we have been operating. Order has to come. And if we are trying to do it in a decent manner, and people don't want to cooperate with us, then we have to bring the hammer down. So, I am appealing to all Guyanese because it is not only happening in Sophia. Stop the squatting. And she said something interesting. We know we have issues with land allocation. We are working on it. Stop the squatting. Mr. Speaker, as I said, these words were spoken by the former APNU AFC Minister of Housing. And Mr. Speaker, this was not only done in Sophia. There were also demolitions in Region 3 and in East Ranville. Mr. Speaker, let me try and fast. Mr. Speaker, most of the speakers of the opposition also had issues with our infrastructure program. But Mr. Speaker, I dare say that most of my colleagues on the opposite side, they don't understand that the infrastructural development is undertaken by countries to achieve the goal of enhancing economic growth and further improving the quality of life of our citizens. Mr. Speaker, the gamut of infrastructural enhancements that we are going to be seeing in this budget is definitely going to improve the lives of our people. Mr. Speaker, time will not permit me to give all of the infrastructural developments that would be expected. Mr. Speaker, when the honorable member, agricultural minister was speaking, and he said that we're leaders in agriculture, somebody shouted, because you have oil. Mr. Speaker, it is not because we have oil. It is because they all recognize that our fiscal policies are sound and it is translating into sustainable development. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I would like to reiterate the PPPC's government commitment to the construction of a one Guyana state, continued growth of our economy, improving livelihoods, as well as securing the long-term prosperity of our nation. Mr. Speaker, it is said, you wouldn't realize the distance you have walked until you look around and realize how far you have been. And the reality is, Mr. Speaker, that we have come a long, long way from where we were in 2020. Thank you, sir.